Guys, Threelly here. On this channel, we make videos around technology tips, career advice, and inspiration. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about 10 acronyms every tech professional should know. These are 10 acronyms every tech professional should know. So guys, before we dive right in, I want to share with you a little experience or a little story to bring this home. Now, let's just imagine for a second that you were walking around and you were doing your day-to-day stuff, and all of a sudden you encounter this alien. Yeah, I'm talking about an alien. You encounter an alien, all right? And you are somebody that loves inspiration. And in all your kindness to this alien, you figure out that you want to give them some really good wisdom, right? That you figure out as a human. And you want to give this alien that good wisdom. And so in your infinite wisdom, you tell this alien, you got to enjoy your time on planet Earth because YOLO. All right? You got to enjoy your time on planet Earth because YOLO. And the alien looks at you in dismay because they have no understanding what YOLO means, right? You know what YOLO means. The alien has no idea what YOLO means. Okay, and why is this interesting, and why is this an important conversation we can look at to dissect? Is because in the human vocabulary, we know what YOLO means. YOLO means you only live once, but to the alien, it means nothing. And the reason why we're talking about this is because groups of people typically have a common vocabulary, a common lingua franca, a common way of talking, a common expressions, common acronyms that might make sense to them, but to other people, it might not make any sense. All right, so YOLO might make sense to a lot of humans. I don't think every human out there, but to a lot of humans, YOLO might make sense. But to that poor alien, they have no idea what YOLO means, and you have to explain to them what YOLO means so they can pick it up. All right, guys, so that said, we're going to bring this back into what we're going to be talking about here, which is 10 acronyms that every tech professional should know. A lot of you guys that are watching this channel, you want to be tech professionals, or you are tech professionals, or you're just thinking about it. The interesting thing you're going to realize is that, just the way the alien can speak, or the human can speak to an alien using acronyms that the alien has no idea what it is. Guys, as humans or as tech professionals, you're going to see other tech professionals use acronyms that you're going to sit and scratch your head and wonder, what does this acronym mean, right? It's going to be as alien to you as YOLO is to an alien. All right, so this is why it's very important to understand what these acronyms are, so you don't feel like an alien when dealing with other tech professionals. This list could be a very long list. It could be a very long list. We don't have to keep it at 10. But the reason why I'm keeping this at 10 is to get you thinking, all right? So that when you go out there and you're seeing all these acronyms, you might want to even create your own dictionary of acronyms, all right? We can make this list as long as we want. So again, this is not a final list. It's in no particular order, but just to get your mind thinking. So if you hear some of these acronyms and somebody's trying to play smart on you, you can just simply nod your head and say, yeah, I'm not an alien. I got what exactly you're talking about. So guys, that's it. Let's dive right into the very first one. CLI, right? CLI. It's not called CLI. Some people might call it CLI. It's a CLI. You pronounce it as such, all right? And it stands for Command Line Interface. So this is basically a UI for talking to machines, for talking to computers. A lot of us are used to interacting with an application by clicking button and such, but for programmers, a lot of times when you want to send a command to the machine to tell the machine to do something, it's a CLI. So think about the black screen on Windows. On Mac too, it's a black screen. You can change the color. That's what a CLI is. For many people, if you're not a programmer, you might not spend any time in the CLI. But if you're a programmer or just a tech professional, you might find yourself coming to a CLI over and over again. So a CLI, command line interface, a very common interface that programmers use to interact with applications. Now, the next one that we have on that list here is an API. An API, and an API stands for Application Programming Interface. So application programming interface. We live in a world today where as humans we can talk to other humans, but guess what? The applications and the software we're building, they have to talk to other software and to other applications, and they do this through a common interface, through a common vocabulary, through a common set of standards. That's what an interface is, so they can talk to each other, right? A common API that a lot of people are familiar with when this comes up is the Twitter API. You might have heard of it. When Twitter was created, you can interact with Twitter by logging into your app on the web or on your phone, and you can interact with Twitter. All right, that's how humans interact with Twitter. But what if you're a machine, or what if I'm writing an application where I want to get all the tweets that somebody has posted and use that to show it on some other applications? I just cannot, my application can't log in the way a human would to the Twitter interface. But Twitter has exposed a set of APIs where you can say, I want the list of all the tweets from this user, and you can get all of that information as a machine, and then you can use that to build other applications, right? So API is a very common thing in today's world, and is growing more and more by the day, because a lot of applications are talking to other applications, and the way they do that is through the API, the application programming interface. So a very powerful one. You got Twitter has an API, Facebook has an API, LinkedIn has an API, Google has APIs. A lot of these applications, they have the UI, which a lot of us see, and they also have APIs that other applications are using to talk to those services or to those platforms. So a very important acronym to be very aware of as a tech professional. Guys, the next one we're going to look at here is JSON. It's pronounced JSON. It's not pronounced JS, or some way somebody might try to pronounce this. All right, it's not pronounced ASON. I think you might even, I don't know, but it's pronounced JSON. That's the correct, at least that's how I've heard it being pronounced. So it stands for JavaScript Object Notation. You might have heard of JSON. That's basically what it is. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and basically a JSON is a file format, a specification of file format on how data is transferred. So we talked about APIs before. When you interact with the API, all right, the information that you get back is coming in the form of a text, and this text is structured in a specific way, and that format in which a text is structured is called JSON. You might hear of JSON in similar discussion with XML. XML was kind of what was used before JSON. JSON is becoming more popular now, right? So JSON is really a file specification, a format of a way of sending messages so that machines can understand what is in that message. All right, just like the way you might be writing a paper and you're using a Word document, and you write your message in that Word document, and you can send that to somebody, and somebody can open it up if they have Word and read what you have. Think about JSON that way. It's just a format where you can put messages in that format. You send that over to somebody. When they take that payload, they can understand what is in that message. So very, very powerful, especially for transmitting information and data. All right, a lot of APIs transmit their data by JSON. Now the next one we're going to look at here is OOP. Right, it's been called OOP, at least that's how I call it. I don't know if some people might call it OOP. I don't think that's the way it probably goes, but OOP, right? Object Oriented Programming. So if you ever hear of OOP, it stands for Object Oriented Programming. Now, what does Object Oriented Programming means? It's just a programming approach. All right, and I was introduced to OOP with Java. So if you're familiar with the Java programming language, the way you program in Java is by using the object-oriented programming approach. And so with the object-oriented programming approach, when you're writing your code, you're thinking about everything as an object. So you're thinking about, let's just think about the real world, right? You're thinking about a car could be an object, a house is an object, a bank could be an object, all right? And then those objects can interact with each other through methods. Right? I'm not going to go into all of the details there, but it's really writing program and trying to mimic the real world in thinking of things as object, and those objects can interact. All right, and you can go into more details of classes and interfaces and a lot of things, but if you just hear of object-oriented programming, just think about a programming approach that thinks of things in terms of objects, and then those objects can interact with each other. Those objects can have behaviors, and those behaviors, just like the way my car can start, my car can stop, my car can move forward, my car can have a color red, which is a property of that car. you can mimic that in the object-oriented programming with classes and objects and methods and all of that. So very, very interesting. Java is one of the popular ones. C# is object-oriented programming. There are lots of object-oriented programming, and this is a little bit different from scripting languages, which you might also hear with Python and a few others that are more on the scripting side. All right, so object-oriented programming, OOP. Now the next one we're going to look at here is FTP, file transfer protocol. All right, so FTP is a way of transmitting files in the internet or for organizations. Organizations use this a lot. They use FTP. Even though I would challenge that this is kind of changing. The paradigm here is changing a little bit, but that will be for a different video. But FTP has been around for a while, right? So if one organization wants to send a big file over to another organization, they FTP that. All right, if you think about, for you, before Google Drive and some of the services that we have, if you wanted to send a file over to a friend, what you do is you take that file, you attach it in an email, and then you send that email over to that friend, and then the friend can open up the email and they can download that file. Well, if you know, and I think a lot of people have also experienced this, is that if you have a very big file, if I'm making a video and the file is really big, you're not gonna be attaching that in the email server that you're using, right? That would not work. So you have to find another way of sending that file. And if you think of organizations, they have lots of files, lots of big, massive files that they need to move around. All right. And so what they do is they set up an FTP server, and that FTP server, you can set that up, and the recipient can have an FTP server to receive or to access and to download the files that the organization has exposed for them. So think about on the mail side, if you're talking about email, you have the SMTP server, right? The that's a whole different one, but you have an SMTP server. But just for transferring files, you have FTP server, all right? Or you have the SFTP server, so the secure file transfer protocol is a protocol for transferring files that organizations tend to use a lot. So really very important to be aware of this. If somebody's talking about FTP, you know that they're trying to send files, or you understand what exactly they mean. Now, the next one we're going to look at here is an SDK. SDK, all right, stands for software development kit. So software development kit. So this comes with applications, or for people who are looking to write programs that can do things, right? They use SDKs to do that. So if you think about software development, this is a kit for software development. I think it kind of is self-explanatory there. All right, a good example for this would be, think about Java, right? This is a very popular SDK. So if you want to build an application and you want to use the Java programming language, Java provides an SDK, which is a set of libraries, right, and interfaces that you can use to build your application. So think about this as, in the software world, is the machine that builds the machine. All right, so if you want to write a program, you have the programming language, you need this set of libraries, this SDK, to allow you to write your program. That's basically what it is. Java has SDK. A lot of tools would provide SDKs that you can use to build other applications. So developers use this quite a bit. So something just to be aware of if you see this acronym somewhere. Now, the next one that we have on the list talking about writing programs is the IDE. It stands for Integrated Development Environment. So this stands for an integrated development environment. Again, pretty self-explanatory there. Integrated, and then it's a development environment. So this is where, if you want to write code, if you want to write a program, if you want to write a software, you need a space to go in and write that software. All right. The example I'll give here is, think about, you're in school and your professor gives you a homework to do, and you need to go write that paper somewhere, right? You go to Microsoft Word, you go to Google Docs, or you go to some Word document to write that code, to write that paper, to go in and actually type it out. Okay, that is your text editor. That is your Word document that you're using for writing your papers. Now, if you're trying to write code in Java, in Python, in Scala, in some of these other languages, you're not going to be using your Word document, right? Because your Word document doesn't understand the code that you're going to be writing. So what you need is an IDE, a specific application where you can go in and you can write your code, and that environment can actually understand what you're writing. All right, there are lots of IDEs out there, everything from Eclipse, which is a very popular open source one, to NetBeans, JetBrains, PyCharm, Visual Studio Code, and a lot of IDEs that are available out there. Depending on what programming language you're writing in, you get the IDE that works for that programming language. So if you're doing Python, for example, you might be using PyCharm, which is a popular one. If you're doing Java, you might be using like Eclipse, or NetBeans, which is a good one. If you're doing Visual Studio, you can use Visual Studio, or you can do Visual Studio Code, which supports other languages as well. So, and it helps with a lot. It makes your life easy. All right, it makes your life way easy with IntelliSense, with code completion, and syntax verification, and all of that. So IDE, integrated development environment, this is where developers go in to write code. Now, the next one that we have on this list to look at is SQL. SQL. I don't know if it's pronounced Q, right? But it's SQL. That's how you pronounce it. Or some people call it SQL. SQL, not SQ. SQL. So you can either say SQL or you can say SQL. I think it's 50-50. I've seen people talking of SQL. Some people calling it SQL. It's 50-50. All right, but that simply stands for Structured Query Language. Structured Query Language. Now, what does Structured Query Language mean? It basically is it's a language, first of all, and it's a way of talking to data, all right, in a structured manner. So if you think about the world we exist in today, you might have heard of the boom in data, big data, machine learning, AI, and companies and people are generating and accumulating all these massive amounts of data sets, all right, and they need a way to interact with that data. So when you collect data, you're storing that data in a database. You're storing all of that data in a database. Now you need a way to talk to and interact with that data. All right. So if your data is in a database, you need to understand SQL to talk to that data. So it's a structured query language on talking to data that you have in the database. So that you hear select statements, update, delete, merge. It's just an entire language in itself just for really interacting with data. If you want to work and do anything with data, SQL is a language you probably want to be aware of, and talking about NoSQL and other derivations of this. So really, really important concept to be aware of. And this is becoming bigger and bigger, especially as we get more and more data in the world today. Now, the next one that we have on this list is, and this builds on from SQL, is CRUD. Right, CRUD, CRUD, which is create, read, update, delete. Right, so you might hear CRUD operations. At least I pronounce it CRUD operations. So if you're working with SQL and you're trying to perform certain actions on your data, you might be doing CRUD operations. Right, so if you're using SQL to create new data in your database, you're creating that data. It's a CRUD operation. If you're just reading data, it's a CRUD operation. If you're trying to update and change data in a database using SQL, you're creating a CRUD operation. If you're deleting records from a database, you're doing a CRUD operation. All right, so CRUD is something that, especially for people who work with data, you might be using SQL to perform CRUD operations on data. Now, the next one that we're going to talk about here, and is the last, certainly not the least, and it's something that in the world of tech professionals you might come across sooner or later in maybe good or not so good circumstances, is this whole idea of the dry. Some people even call it the dry principle. And somebody says, hey, don't dry it. I don't want you drying that stuff. All right. It doesn't mean that, dry as you would think, right? Just like the example we use of the alien, what can mean different things. So dry in this case simply means don't repeat yourself. So if someone ever tells you dry, I don't know what circumstance they'll be telling you that, but it might be because either you're talking too much or you're not talking too much. And dry. I'm not repeating myself. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. We've looked at 10 acronyms that every tech professional should know, especially for beginners. But wherever you fall in the spectrum in your career, these are 10 things that you should definitely be aware of. Again, thanks for watching. This is Fru. Let's bring this back. As a tech professional, you want to understand the vocabulary. You want to understand the language. You don't want things sounding alien to you. All right, we're all humans, and we want to be able to talk to other humans within the context of that space, that body of knowledge, which is technology. And it's very important to understand the vocabulary. The vocabulary is growing, it's evolving, it's changing. New words are coming in, new words are being added. All right, and if you don't understand the vocabulary, you don't understand the language, you cannot communicate. You cannot communicate. All right, and if you cannot communicate, you cannot be part of the community. If you want to be a tech professional and be part of the community, then learning the language and being able to communicate with other people through not just normal words, but through acronyms like we've seen, can go a long way to ensuring, your success in the field. All right, guys. So again, thanks for watching. This was Thru. Hopefully you found all of this really valuable. If you did like it, please do consider subscribing. That will mean a lot. Like the video and subscribe. That would really mean a lot to show us you're liking these videos as we work to get more of these types of videos coming. Now, if for some reason you happen not to like this video, I'm going to give you a little tip here. All right. What you want to do is go over into the dislike section, the dislike button on YouTube, and just hit it 2 times. I really emphasize this. You gotta do it 2 times, all right? Because that way it really shows YouTube that you don't like this video, and we can get that feedback. All right, I hope that was very helpful. Again, guys, thank you. This is Thru. Thanks for watching to the end. Appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.